The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched upward into darkness, its ancient walls covered with gleaming metals from 1,000 worlds. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in rising tiers, their faces lit by the soft blue glow of floating screens. At the center of it all stood a single human. Ambassador Tom Gray stood straight and tall, his simple black uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes of the council members. His gray hair and lined face showed his age, but his eyes burned with an inner fire that made even the oldest council members shift uneasily in their seats. For 300 years, he spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Humanity has endured your restrictions. We have watched as you denied us access to trade routes. We have seen you block our colony ships. We have noticed every time you whispered warnings to other species about doing business with Earth. The Council Elder Prime, a tall being with silver skin that rippled like water, leaned forward. Your species has a history of violence. The protocols exist for good reason. A small smile crossed Gray's face. Violence? Yes. We have fought wars. We have made mistakes. But we have also learned from them. Meanwhile, your council has spent 10,000 years doing the same things, following the same rules, never changing, never growing. Murmurs filled the chamber. A representative from the merchant worlds, his green scales flashing, called out, "Is this why you requested an emergency session? To complain about established safety protocols?" "No." Gray's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "I am here to give you a warning." He pressed a button on his wrist device, and a hologram appeared above the chamber's central platform. It showed a star map of the galaxy, with thousands of points of light glowing in different colors. "The red dots," Gray continued, "are your major military bases. The blue ones are your shipyards. The green represent your biggest population centers." He paused, letting the council members study the familiar map. "The yellow dots are human ships and bases that you don't know about." The chamber erupted in laughter. The Council Elder Prime raised a hand for silence, amusement clear in their rippling skin. "Ambassador, your attempt at intimidation is both crude and impossible. Our monitoring systems track every ship, every station, every colony in council space. Your systems track what they're designed to track." Gray replied calmly. 20 years ago, we discovered something interesting in the ancient council records. Your ancestors were so proud of creating the perfect monitoring technology that they never considered someone might develop something completely different. The laughter died as Gray manipulated his device again. Suddenly, new points of light appeared on the map. Hundreds of them, then thousands, all glowing yellow. They were everywhere, surrounding major council worlds, hidden in asteroid fields, lurking in the spaces between stars. "Impossible," whispered the merchant representative, his scales now a pale white. "You had 300 years to welcome us as equals," Gray said, his voice heavy with regret. "Instead, you treated us like children, dangerous children who needed to be contained. And all that time, we were learning, growing, developing technologies your sensors can't detect, using principles your scientists never thought to explore." The Council Elder Prime stood, their silver skin now dark with anger. "If this is true, you have violated dozens of council laws. The punishment will not be happening," Gray interrupted. "Your time of punishing us is over. In fact, your time of controlling anyone is over. We're not here to ask for admission to your council anymore. We're here to tell you that things are going to change." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes and eye equivalents of each council member. "You have one standard day to begin dismantling the discriminatory protocols against Earth and all other young species. If you refuse—" He smiled again, but there was no humor in it. "Well, we've learned a lot about warfare too. The difference is, we've also learned when not to use it." With that, Ambassador Gray turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a silence heavier than the weight of stars. 20 years earlier, in a hidden facility deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Jane Miller stared at the ancient text scrolling across her screen. Her hands shook as she translated the last line of code. double-checking her work. After 3 sleepless nights, she had finally cracked it. "Call the president," she said to her assistant. "We'd found something they never wanted us to see." The underground chamber hummed with the sound of quantum computers. Screens lined the walls, showing ships moving through council space, following the same patterns they had for thousands of years. But it wasn't the ships that interested Jane anymore. It was the gaps between them. 2 hours later, the facility's main conference room was packed with Earth's top military and scientific leaders. Jane stood at the front, her uniform crisp despite her exhaustion. "The Council's control isn't based on superior technology," she began. "It's based on rules written so long ago that everyone follows them without questioning why." She brought up a complex diagram. "This is their monitoring network. It looks for specific energy signatures, specific patterns. Anything that doesn't match these patterns is ignored as background noise." An older general raised his hand. "Are you saying we can hide from them?" Jane smiled. "I'm saying we already are." She pressed a button, and a new image appeared. "This is one of our test ships, sitting right next to a council monitoring station. They can't see it because we're not using their type of engines or their type of metals. We're invisible not because we're trying to hide, but because they're not trying to find us." The room burst into excited whispers. The president leaned forward. "How long until we can build a fleet?" "That's the best part," Jane replied. "We've been building it for 5 years. Remember all those failed space mining operations? The ones that disappeared into deep space?" She brought up another map, showing dozens of locations. "They didn't fail. They just went somewhere the Council never thought to look." Over the next 15 years, humanity worked in silence, while Council representatives lectured them about proper spaceship design. Earth's hidden shipyards produced vessels that broke every rule in the Council's book. While alien traders refused to sell them advanced technology, human scientists developed completely new ways of doing things. Commander Miller's discovery changed everything. Teams of researchers studied the Council's ancient protocols, finding more and more blind spots. They built bases in dimensional pockets that the Council's sensors couldn't detect. They developed communication systems that looked like natural background radiation to alien monitors. "The Council thinks technology only advances in one direction," Jane explained to a group of new recruits. "They've spent 10,000 years perfecting their way of doing things, but there are other ways. Hundreds of them. Thousands. They're so busy watching their well-lit highway that they never noticed we built our own roads through the woods." In a secret facility on Mars, engineers tested phase shift technology that could make ships virtually untouchable. On Europa, scientists perfected dark energy manipulation that made the Council's fastest ships look like they were standing still. Every failure in Council space was matched by 2 hidden successes. Now, 15 years after Jane's discovery, humanity's hidden fleet was larger than anyone on Earth had dreamed possible. Bases and colonies existed in places the Council had declared uninhabitable. A complete shadow civilization had grown in the gaps between the Council's careful measurements. Jane stood at her window in the Rocky Mountain facility, looking up at the stars. Soon, the Council would learn what humanity had accomplished. But first, they had to spring the trap. First, they had to give the Council one last chance to do the right thing. "Send the message to Ambassador Gray," she told her assistant. "Tell him it's time for the warning." The Council chamber had never been so quiet. 2 days after Ambassador Gray's warning, the Council Elder Prime called for an emergency vote. The Great Hall's floating lights dimmed to a deep purple, casting long shadows across worried faces. "The humans have broken our most sacred laws," the Elder Prime's voice echoed through the chamber, their silver skin now a dark, angry gray. "They have hidden ships, built secret bases, and developed unauthorized technology. There can be only one response." In their private chamber, 3 levels below, the Council's inner circle gathered around a holographic display of Earth. 10 of the oldest species in the galaxy, each believing they knew what was best for everyone else. "Protocol containment is ready," said the defense minister, a tall being with crystalline features. Our ships are in position. The humans will never see it coming. The merchant representative, still shaken from Gray's presentation, spoke up. Perhaps we should consider their warning, if they truly have the capabilities they claimed. That's exactly why we must act now. The Elder Prime cut in. Every day we wait gives them more time to prepare. The containment field will cut off all travel to and from their solar system. No ships in or out. No communications. No trade. They will be completely alone. On the main display, red dots appeared, showing the positions of Council warships. Hundreds of them, arranged in a perfect sphere around Earth's solar system. Each one carried a piece of the containment field technology. Once activated, they would create an impenetrable barrier. The vote will be unanimous, the Elder Prime continued. It has to be. We'll show the galaxy what happens to species that defy Council law. Back in the main chamber, representatives from 1,000 worlds cast their votes. Many did so reluctantly, looking over their shoulders as if expecting human ships to appear at any moment. But in the end, fear of the Council outweighed their fear of Earth. The Elder Prime raised their hands in triumph. The vote is complete. Protocol containment will begin immediately. Let all worlds witness the price of defiance. Deep in space, Council warships began powering up their containment generators. The technology was ancient, developed by the Elder Prime species eons ago. It had only been used 3 times in Council history, each time successfully imprisoning an aggressive species until they submitted to Council authority. The Defense Minister's voice came through on all channels. Containment field activation in 10 minutes. All ships maintain position. Remember, once the field is active, nothing can pass through from either side. Earth will be cut off from the galaxy forever. In the Council chamber, they watched the countdown on the main display. The Elder Prime allowed themselves a small smile. Soon, the human problem would be solved. Their defiance would serve as a lesson to other young species who might think of breaking Council law. 5 minutes to activation. The merchant representative shifted uncomfortably. Has anyone noticed that we haven't detected a single human ship trying to escape the containment zone? They don't know what's coming, the Elder Prime said confidently. Our ships maintained complete communication silence during positioning. 2 minutes to activation. Suddenly, a junior aide burst into the chamber, their tentacles waving in distress. Elder Prime, we're detecting energy signatures everywhere. They're not like anything in our database. 1 minute to activation. The main display flickered, then changed. Where there had been empty space around the Council ships, now there were thousands of points of yellow light. Human ships, appearing out of nowhere, surrounding the entire containment fleet. 30 seconds to activation. Ambassador Gray's voice came through on all channels, calm and clear. We warned you to run. The Council chamber erupted in chaos as the truth dawned on them all. The humans hadn't just predicted this response. They had counted on it. And now, the Council's entire containment fleet was exactly where humanity wanted them to be. Containment field activation in 10, 9, 8. Admiral Robert Stone stood on the bridge of the Earth Ship Defender, watching as the Council's containment fleet powered up their ancient technology. His own fleet, hidden until now by phase shift technology, surrounded the Council ships in a perfect sphere. It was like looking at a mirror image of the Council's trap, except humanity's sphere was larger. All ships report ready, Admiral, his second-in-command reported. Phase shift systems are stable. Dark energy drives are charged. Stone nodded, his weathered face calm. Send the signal to all ships. Operation Reversal begins now. Across space, thousands of Earth vessels shimmered into visibility. They weren't the sleek, standardized designs the Council mandated. Each ship was unique, built for specific purposes, using technologies the Council had never imagined. In the Council chamber, the Elder Prime watched in horror as their display filled with human ships. Impossible. Fire on those vessels. Activate the containment field now. Council ships launched their attacks, energy beams, and plasma torpedoes streaming toward Earth's fleet. But the weapons passed harmlessly through the human vessels, their phase-shifted state making them untouchable. This is Admiral Stone to all Council vessels, his voice broadcasted on all frequencies. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your containment field cannot trap us. Power down your systems immediately. The defense minister's crystalline face cracked with strain. Continue the attack. They must have some weakness. Stone's voice came again, patient as a teacher explaining to a stubborn student. Look at your sensors. Really look. We're not using deflector shields or energy barriers. Your weapons aren't being stopped. They're passing through us as if we're not even here. On the Defender's bridge, Stone watched as the Council ships continued their futile assault. Show them what we can do, he ordered. Target pattern Alpha. Earth ships moved in perfect coordination, their dark energy drives letting them ignore the normal laws of motion. They flowed around Council vessels like water around rocks, passing through their defensive screens as if they didn't exist. In the Council chamber, panic spread as reports flooded in. Council ships reported their weapons were shutting down, their engines going dark. Not from damage. The systems simply stopped responding. What are they doing to our ships? The Elder Prime demanded. The answer came from the merchant representative, who had been studying the readings. Nothing. They're not attacking at all. They're adjusting the quantum states of our systems, making microscopic changes to the very fabric of space around our ships. Stone's voice returned. For centuries, you forced us to study your technology, to follow your rules, to do things your way. But while you watched us copy your homework, we were writing our own books. The Council fleet hung helpless in space, their mighty weapons and impenetrable shields useless against an enemy that fought by completely different rules. Earth ships moved through their formation at will, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. The containment field generators, the defense minister reported, voice shaking. They're dissolving, not exploding, not breaking. Just coming apart at the molecular level. Admiral Stone turned to his crew, pride evident on his face. Send the second signal. Let's show them what else we've been hiding. Across the galaxy, in systems the Council thought were empty, in spaces between the stars where no one thought to look, more human ships emerged. Research stations appeared in orbit around supposedly dead worlds. Hidden colonies revealed themselves on planets the Council had declared uninhabitable. Your containment plan failed. Stone broadcast to the Council ships, not because we fought it, but because we were never where you thought we were. We were never what you thought we were. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Now about those regulations you've been using to control the galaxy. Dr. Mary White walked through the halls of the Council's Science Academy, her footsteps echoing off walls that hadn't seen change in thousands of years. Behind her, Council guards watched nervously as she ran her hand along their perfect quantum computers, machines that hadn't been upgraded in centuries. Your biggest mistake, she said to the gathered Council scientists, was thinking that technology only moves in one direction. She placed a small cube on the table in front of them. It was black, unassuming, and to their sensors, completely invisible. The head scientist, a being made of pure energy contained in a traditional Council environment suit, moved closer. Our technology represents 10,000 years of refinement. You cannot possibly have surpassed it in mere centuries. Mary smiled. We didn't try to surpass it. We went around it. She activated the cue, and suddenly the room was filled with holographic displays showing human scientific achievements. While you were perfecting your quantum computers, we discovered that consciousness itself could be used as a computing medium. While you refined your energy weapons, we learned to step outside normal spacetime. In orbit above the Council homeworld, more human ships appeared from their phase-shifted state. But these weren't warships. They were research vessels, mobile laboratories, and exploration ships. Each one represented a different path of scientific discovery that the Council had never explored. Your societies became so specialized, Mary continued, walking through the holograms. Each species focusing on one type of technology, one way of thinking. But humans, we try everything. When one path doesn't work, we try another, and another, and another. She pointed to a display showing human colony worlds. These planets you declared uninhabitable. We didn't terraform them like you suggested. We adapted ourselves instead. Modify our own biology to suit new environments. The council scientists murmured in shock. Modifying core biology was forbidden under their laws, seen as too dangerous and unpredictable. But that's forbidden. The head scientist protested. The risks were managed, Mary interrupted, because we did something you forgot how to do long ago. We experimented. We failed. We learned. We tried again. In the Academy's main hall, she revealed more of humanity's achievements. Ships powered by dark energy that could cross the galaxy in days. Construction methods that built machines at the quantum level, atom by atom. Communication systems that used consciousness itself to transmit messages instantly across any distance. Your laws around technology weren't about safety, she explained. They were about control, about keeping things the same. But the universe doesn't work that way. It's always changing, always moving forward. You can either change with it or get left behind. One young council scientist, braver than the rest, stepped forward. Will you share this knowledge? Mary's face softened. That's why we're here. Not to punish you for trying to contain us, but to show you what's possible when you stop containing yourselves. She pressed another button on the cube, and new holograms appeared. Technical specifications, research data, experimental results. All of this is yours to study, to build upon, to improve, because that's something else we learned while you were trying to keep us down. Knowledge only grows when it's shared. The council scientists crowded around the displays, their centuries of conditioning giving way to renewed curiosity. Mary watched them with satisfaction, knowing that this, not the failed containment field or the helpless warships, was humanity's real victory. The galaxy is too big for any one species to have all the answers, she told them. It's time for all of us to start asking new questions. On 1,000 worlds across the galaxy, the Council's power began to crumble, not through violence or destruction, but through simple demonstration. Human ships appeared simultaneously above every major Council world, their presence impossible to ignore or hide. In the Council's main chamber, the Elder Prime watched in disbelief as their communication systems showed scene after scene of human technological superiority. Their planetary defense networks, the pride of the Council's military might, switched off one by one. Not destroyed, simply deactivated by technology that operated on principles they couldn't understand. We have to fight back, the defense minister shouted, their crystalline form flickering with stress patterns. Order all remaining ships to do what? Interrupted a new voice. The merchant representative stood up, their scales now showing the bold colors of confidence. Look at your screens. Really look. The displays showed Council ships trying to engage the human vessels. Energy weapons passed harmlessly through phase-shifted hulls. Missiles curved away from their targets, their guidance systems gently reprogrammed by quantum fields they couldn't detect. Some ships simply stopped moving, their engines suspended in pocket dimensions that hadn't existed moments before. They're not fighting us, the merchant representative continued. They're showing us how pointless fighting would be. Above each Council world, human ships began broadcasting their message. Not threats or demands, but information. Data streamed to every communication device, every computer terminal, every news network. The truth about the Council's manipulation over millennia, not just of humans, but of every species they'd encountered. The Elder Prime watched helplessly as centuries of careful control dissolved. On dozens of worlds, younger species began demanding answers. Why had they been restricted from exploring certain technologies? Why had their development been carefully channeled along paths the Council chose? This is Commander Jane Miller to all Council worlds, a voice broadcast across all frequencies. We have disabled your military capabilities not to conquer you, but to prevent unnecessary violence during this transition. Your civilian infrastructure remains untouched. Your people are safe. In orbit around the Council homeworld, the flagship Defender held position. Admiral Stone stood on his bridge, watching the situation unfold exactly as planned. Send in the diplomatic teams, he ordered. It's time for Phase 2. Across the galaxy, human diplomatic vessels landed on Council worlds. They brought not demands for surrender, but offers of cooperation. Scientists, engineers, and researchers emerge, ready to share the technologies that the Council had forbidden for so long. The younger Council races, led by the merchant species, were the first to break away. They had always questioned the old restrictions, and now they sought a chance for real change. Human representatives worked with local leaders, ensuring smooth transitions of power. In the Council chamber, the Elder Prime made one last attempt to maintain control. You cannot simply ignore 10,000 years of tradition. The protocols exist for a reason. The protocols existed to keep you in power, Ambassador Gray replied, stepping into the chamber. But power shouldn't come from age or tradition. It should come from wisdom, from innovation, from the ability to adapt and grow. He walked to the center of the chamber, where so recently he had delivered humanity's warning. We're not here to rule. We're here to help build something new, something better. Around him, representatives from younger Council races nodded in agreement. Even some of the older species, seeing the pointlessness of resistance, began to accept the inevitable change. The galaxy was entering a new age, not one of human dominance, but one of true cooperation. The Council's betrayal had indeed backfired, but in doing so, it had opened the door to possibilities they had never imagined. 1 month after humanity's demonstration of power, the Great Council chamber looked very different. The ancient metals still gleamed on the walls, but now they were joined by new materials that seemed to shift and flow with impossible properties. The rising tiers of seats had been rearranged into a circular pattern, symbolizing the equality of all species. Ambassador Gray stood at the center, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from every species, old and young, stood with him. Even the Elder Prime was present, though they now wore simple robes instead of their usual ornate garments. The old Council is dissolved, Gray announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. In its place, we established the Galactic Alliance, not ruled by age or tradition, but by merit and mutual contribution. The merchant representative, now elected as the first alliance coordinator, stepped forward. Their scales shimmered with patterns of hope and determination. Already, our worlds have begun to change. Human scientists work alongside our own, sharing knowledge that was forbidden for millennia. On the main display, images flowed from across the galaxy. A former Council race learning to use phase shift technology alongside human teachers. Young species developing their own versions of dark energy drives, improving on human designs with fresh perspectives. Former enemies working together to explore regions of space the old Council had declared off-limits. Dr. Mary White appeared on the screen, speaking from a new joint research facility. In just 1 month, we've made more progress working together than any of us made alone in years. Every species brings unique insights, different ways of thinking. That's the real power we should have been harnessing all along. The Elder Prime stepped forward, their silver skin showing hints of brighter colors, a sign of change in their usually static species. We were wrong, they admitted, addressing all gathered species. We thought we were protecting the galaxy by controlling it. Instead, we were holding everyone back, including ourselves. Commander Jane Miller, watching from her Rocky Mountain facility on Earth, smiled as she saw her discovery of the Council's protocols lead not to war, but to reformation. Her screen showed thousands of ships, human, former Council, and new Alliance vessels, working together to dismantle the old monitoring networks and build new ones based on transparency and cooperation. Admiral Stone's voice came through the chamber speakers. The Defender and our other ships are being converted from military vessels to exploration and research craft. We're already planning joint missions to regions of space no species has ever reached. Ambassador Gray nodded in satisfaction. But our greatest achievement isn't technological, he said, looking around the chamber. It's this moment. All of us, standing together as equals, ready to face the future without fear or artificial limitations. The chamber erupted in applause and various species expressions of approval. Even some of the oldest council members had begun to show excitement about the possibilities ahead. "We warned you to run," Gray said, smiling at the Elder Prime. "But we're glad you stayed instead. The galaxy needs all of us working together." As the newly formed alliance began its first official session, screens throughout the chamber showed the changes already spreading across known space. New colonies founded by mixed species groups. Ancient council weapons being transformed into tools for exploration. Young species taking their first steps into space under the guidance of both human and former council mentors. The council's betrayal had indeed backfired, but not just against them. It had backfired against the very idea of one species or group controlling the rest. In its place grew something stronger. A galaxy of equals, bound together not by force or tradition, but by shared curiosity and mutual respect. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson, not through violence, but through opportunity. They had shown that the most powerful force wasn't control. It was the freedom to grow, to change, and to dream of better possibilities. The future was no longer written in the ancient protocols of the Council. Now, it would be written together, one discovery at a time.